What's up? We heard 3 shots.
Just give me a minute.
Brody,
What's
what's
wrong?
going on?
It's Mr. Cupcake. I'm sorry.
What?
What happened?
What
Is
about
he
him,
okay?
What really happened to the Brown family after Alaskan bush people disappeared from our screens? They seemed to vanish overnight, but the truth behind their sudden disappearance is more shocking than anyone expected. Let's uncover where the Browns really went and why. They were once must-see cable TV, a hard-living, hard-talking family who turned a rugged, off-grid life into a ratings hit. Then the cameras stopped, the episodes tapered off, and fans were left asking the same question: where did the Browns go? Over the last 3 years, the Brown clan, the family at the center of Discovery Channel's Alaskan bush people, have scattered, fought court battles, endured personal tragedy, and, in some cases, run headlong into legal trouble. This is the clearest, most up-to-date account of what really happened to the family that made living off the grid into primetime drama. From runaway hit to unraveling production, Alaskan bush people debuted in 2014 as a docudrama following the Brown family's life in remote Alaska. For years, the show sold a simple, potent idea: a large family surviving by hunting, fishing, and forging community in the wilderness, apart from modern society. Over 14 seasons, that mythology proved malleable. Critics repeatedly questioned how much of the show was staged, and the family weathered multiple public controversies, from residency investigations to courtroom disputes. The family's patriarch, Billy Brown, died in February 2021, a loss that would pivot the series from adventure to the more intimate storyline of serious illness and family caretaking. The program's production life dimmed slowly. Behind the scenes, legal fights and questions about finances and contracts bubbled up. Those tensions eventually culminated in what several outlets described as the effective end of the series. Reporting in early 2025 said Alaskan bush people had been canceled after 14 seasons amid a $500,000 lawsuit brought by Billy Brown's former business partner against the patriarch's estate and production business. That lawsuit and the messy discovery that followed forced family finances into public view and gave outlets plenty of material to suggest the franchise's TV future had been quietly closed. The family map: who stayed, who left, who kept performing. After the show wound down, the Brown family's choices split into familiar camps: land and low-profile living, social media and spin-off efforts, and outright legal entanglements. Bear Brown, once a fan favorite for his boisterous energy and on-screen charisma, remains one of the more public members of the family. In 2024-25, Bear posted updates about moving and family life and cultivated a YouTube and Instagram audience. He signaled intentions to keep creating content, including talk of a Bear-led spin-off project and returning to Alaska with his young sons. But Bear's off-camera life has also been turbulent. In April 2025, he and his wife Raven announced a separation, a public split both described as mutual and aimed at protecting their children, a move that underscored how private stressors had intensified since the camera stopped. Gabe, Noah, Matt, and Bam Bam, the other adult siblings, each followed different paths. Some have pursued contracting and construction work that leans on the practical skills viewers saw on TV. Others rebuilt quieter lives in Washington state and nearby rural areas where the family relocated for medical treatment and wildfire recovery in recent years. Matt Brown, who had been absent from production for stretches even before the show's end, retreated fully from the spotlight. In recent coverage, he is described as living off the grid in the North Cascades and focusing on outdoor living and a modest YouTube presence rather than network television. Legal fights, estate battles, and the cost of fame. The family's public legal history predates the show's cancellation. In 2014-2015, the Browns faced Alaska Department of Revenue scrutiny and criminal charges tied to permanent fund dividend applications. Those charges were ultimately resolved with plea agreements and fines for some family members, and they left lingering skepticism in some corners of Alaska and the press. Those earlier residency controversies set a tone. The line between television narrative and everyday reality had always been porous for the Browns. After Billy Brown's death in 2021, another set of legal disputes emerged. According to reporting tied to the cancellation story, Billy's former business partner, Robert Moggan, sued his estate and the family's production entity, claiming breach of contract and seeking a substantial payout tied to creative works and the show's earnings. Court filings and testimony exposed previously private financial material, including production revenue, assets, and the terms of business arrangements. And those revelations appear to have been a major factor in the network's decision not to continue the show. The legal exposure of how much the Browns actually made, contrasted with their off-grid image, fed a media narrative that helped build the case for cancellation. The result has been more than reputational damage. Family assets, business agreements, and the executor duties for Billy Brown's estate became contested territory, with court rulings and testimonies slowly illuminating a web of agreements that once lived behind the camera. For fans who assumed the Brown lifestyle was purely subsistence, those filings were a reality check. For critics who'd long suspected some degree of production choreography, the disclosures were confirmation. Arrests and new legal headaches. If the estate fight was a long, expensive legal dust-up, some of the family's most immediate legal headlines in 2025 involved criminal charges for individual members. In April 2025, Mary Rain Brown, one of the younger Brown siblings who grew up on the show, and her husband were arrested in Okanogan County, Washington, on charges that included first-degree burglary and malicious mischief. Rain was also charged with second-degree criminal trespass. The arrests and the pending court appearances that followed were among the most sensational developments for the family since the show stopped filming, and they offered a starkly different kind of coverage to the family's usual survivalist PR. Rain and her husband were released on their own recognizance and are scheduled to appear in court at a later date.
That episode underlined a basic truth about the Browns' post-show era. With fewer production crews and network PR teams buffering the family, disputes, separations, and legal incidents show up in news cycles fast and unfiltered. Where once a producer might shape a narrative about a family squabble into a sympathetic subplot, now the courts and local police fill that editorial role. Grief, health, and the reasons they left Alaska. The Browns' move away from Alaska was not purely about drama or money. Ami Brown's diagnosis and treatment for lung cancer was a major factor in relocating family members to the lower 48 for care. The show itself documented these health struggles and the wrenching logistical shifts that followed. In 2020, the family also suffered the loss of property when wildfires destroyed one of their homes. That, paired with Billy's eventual death, created a cascade of changes that made the old Alaska myth harder to sustain. For many of the Browns, especially the older siblings, who had aged into parenting and careers, the calculus of raising children, getting steady medical care, and stabilizing income gradually favored more conventional living. The family's narrative arc shifted from how do we live off the land to how do we keep the family together and healthy? And that transition is a major reason cameras and producers began to lose interest. Networks tend to favor conflict and clear arcs. Caregiving and litigation are less televisually straightforward. Social media, spin-offs, and the new content economy. Not everyone in the family disappeared. In the era of independent creator economics, several Browns pivoted to platforms that reward personality directly: Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Bear, in particular, leaned into building a personal brand, announcing moves, teasing projects, and sharing family updates. Posts about returning to Alaska, launching a bear-centric series, and raising kids in a wolf-pack tradition kept a thread of the show alive online. But it's a different business model. Instead of network development deals and crude production, these projects run on audience donations, ad revenue, and small-scale sponsorships. That shift is important. For the Browns, social platforms offer two benefits: autonomy, they own their narrative, and control, they decide how much of family life to expose. But the trade-off is scale. Independent channels rarely pay the same way a cable production does, and the legal fights over the Billy Brown estate suggest the family's aggregate revenue streams are now fragmented and contested. The complicated legacy, myth-making, authenticity, and the price of reality TV. The Alaskan Bush People arc is a case study in modern reality TV. A family becomes a brand, the brand finances production that blurs into performance, and the performance eventually produces real human costs. For many fans, the show was an uncomplicated escape: wild landscapes, quirky family rituals, and survival lessons. For critics, the program always carried the faint scent of fabrication. The post-show years blended both perspectives. The Browns genuinely faced health crises and loss, but they also became entangled in lawsuits and arrests that made authenticity a harder claim to defend. Part of the family's challenge is a structural one. Reality TV doesn't age well. The behaviors and conflicts that make a show profitable are the same things that fracture personal relationships once the paycheck stops. As producers and networks move on, personalities who were once shepherded by production teams must navigate a world with real legal exposure and fewer buffers between their private lives and public scrutiny. Where the Browns are now, state by state. Putting the scattered pieces together leaves a partial map. Several Browns now live in or near Washington state, the place the family relocated to for medical care and wildfire recovery, while others keep property or time in Alaska. Bear continues to post publicly and talk about Alaska. Noah, Gabe, and others have pursued steady work and quieter family life near the family's former ranching footholds. Matt has chosen the most private route, a low-profile, wilderness-adjacent life focused on survival skills and occasional online videos, rather than television. Meanwhile, legal processes tied to Billy Brown's estate and Rain's criminal charges remain active, leaving open questions about money, property, and family control that could affect how the family makes its next moves. For longtime viewers, the Brown family story functions like an object lesson. The spectacle that once entertained viewers carried with it human consequences that only became visible when the cameras left. The family's fragmentation, legal squabbles, and public splits aren't just tabloid fodder. They show how entanglements between production companies, personal branding, and private obligations can outlive a TV contract and leave long shadows. For networks, the Alaskan Bush People saga highlights another lesson. Authenticity matters less than sustainability. If production relies on spectacle without durable support structures, medical care, clear business accounting, and conflict resolution mechanisms, then the people who create that spectacle are vulnerable when the revenue stops. The Browns will likely keep appearing in media for years, in courtrooms, in social feeds, and perhaps in smaller independent productions. But the unvarnished illusion of the family living entirely off the grid is over. What remains is a messy, familiar American picture of reinvention, litigation, and the attempt to keep a family afloat in public view. The Brown family story is unfinished. Court dockets are active, estate issues remain unresolved, and individual members continue to post updates that oscillate between private pain and public performance. For some fans, it's a tale of betrayal. The image they loved was a product, not pure life. For others, it's a story of survival, adaptation, and the complicated choices people make to protect children and health. Either way, the cameras may be gone, but the consequences of having built a life on television are still playing out, in courtrooms, on Instagram, and in the little domestic dramas of daily life. As the Browns move forward, some quietly, some loudly, their story will continue to test how reality TV should be made and what responsibility producers, networks, and viewers owe to the families they profit from. The romance of the Alaskan wilderness that once drew millions of viewers still exists for the Browns in fragments, but the full picture now contains seasons of grief, legal wrangling, and the very human desire to keep a family together off camera. The Browns weren't just adults navigating fame, they raised a generation of children in front of cameras. From Bear and Raven's kids to the youngest members of the family, the children of the Browns grew up in a highly unusual environment where life lessons, survival skills, and family dynamics were constantly filmed for public consumption. The intense scrutiny left a mark. Social media updates suggest Bear is focusing on shielding his sons from the negative attention that comes with fame, balancing the family's legacy with the need for normalcy.
Meanwhile, other siblings' children have experienced a more private upbringing, with some even pursuing education and outdoor activities away from the media lens. Experts in child development warn that growing up in a televised household can be a double-edged sword. While the Browns gained notoriety and financial opportunity, they also faced challenges in providing stability, especially after Billy's death. The juxtaposition of off-grid living, public attention, and later legal disputes creates a complex environment for children who must navigate both ordinary and extraordinary circumstances. Behind the cameras, how production shaped the story. Much of the narrative surrounding the Browns has always hinged on the way Alaskan Bush People was produced. While the family presented a rugged, isolated lifestyle, insiders and former crew members have explained that the reality series required careful staging and planning to make daily survival engaging for viewers.
Scenes were reshot, storylines were occasionally dramatized, and the editing emphasized conflict, triumph, and suspense. This production approach allowed the Browns to become stars, but came at a cost. Viewers often assumed the off-grid image was entirely authentic, while critics questioned whether the family truly lived the extreme lifestyles shown on television. In post-show years, when court filings revealed financial and logistical details, some of the illusion was inevitably shattered, leaving fans to reconcile the myth with the reality of life off-camera. Health issues were a recurring theme in the Browns' later years, affecting their ability to maintain an isolated lifestyle. Ami Brown's battle with lung cancer forced the family to relocate temporarily to Washington for treatment. Billy's death from natural causes compounded these challenges, leaving a leadership void and creating disputes over estate management. Bear and other siblings have occasionally referenced these struggles online, highlighting the difficult balance of caring for loved ones while dealing with public attention. Beyond physical health, the emotional toll of decades of media exposure has been significant, influencing relationships, decision-making, and priorities. After leaving Alaska, the Browns had to adapt to new surroundings. Washington state and nearby regions became the family's new base, offering access to medical care, education, and legal resources while maintaining a semblance of the outdoor lifestyle they cherished. However, moving away from the rugged Alaskan frontier meant rethinking work, schooling, and property management. Siblings who had relied on hunting, fishing, and small-scale construction for sustenance needed to develop more conventional income sources. Some embraced digital content creation, while others focused on small businesses or hands-on work in construction and wilderness guiding. These shifts illustrate the practical realities of living outside the television bubble. Survival is no longer just a performance for the camera, but a daily responsibility. The post-show era has been defined by legal disputes. The estate battle following Billy Brown's death has drawn national attention, revealing financial agreements and exposing tensions among family members. The lawsuits complicated property ownership, income distribution, and control over intellectual property tied to the show's brand. Meanwhile, criminal charges against Rain Brown and her husband highlighted the challenges of maintaining a private life after years of public exposure. Local courts now handle cases that previously would have been mediated or framed by production teams. These legal developments underscore the lasting consequences of reality TV fame. Contracts, cameras, and public perception only partially protect a family from the challenges of real life. A new stage for storytelling. Even as network cameras disappeared, some Browns embraced social media as a platform to continue storytelling and maintain public engagement. Bear Brown, in particular, has leveraged Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to share updates on family life, survival projects, and Alaska-centered content. These platforms allow for direct audience interaction, but also carry risks. Scrutiny is unfiltered, and mistakes can go viral instantly. The Browns' digital pivot reflects broader trends in reality television. Stars increasingly rely on personal branding and social media income rather than traditional network contracts. For the Browns, this approach provides autonomy and control over their narrative, though it may never replicate the financial stability and audience reach of a televised show. Despite the show's end, fan interest remains strong. Online communities continue to debate the authenticity of the series, share memories of favorite episodes, and track the family's movements through social media. The Browns' story resonates because it blends adventure, hardship, and human vulnerability, even if the adventure now takes place off-camera. The family's legacy is complex. On one hand, they inspired viewers with tales of resilience and survival in extreme conditions. On the other, the exposure has revealed financial, legal, and personal struggles that complicate the public's perception of the Browns as purely self-sufficient Alaskans. This duality is part of the ongoing fascination. The Browns are at once myth and reality, entertainment and cautionary tale. The Browns remain in motion. Court cases, property management, and content creation continue to define their daily lives. Some members prioritize family stability, Others focus on public visibility, while a few remain committed to private wilderness living. What unites them is the experience of navigating life after reality TV, a complex, high-stakes transition that few viewers outside the media industry fully understand. While Alaskan Bush People is no longer airing on Discovery Channel, the story is far from over. Legal proceedings, social media updates, and personal projects ensure the Browns remain in the public eye. For fans and observers, the family serves as a case study in fame, authenticity, and the real-world consequences of living a life broadcast for entertainment. The saga of the Browns illustrates a broader truth about reality television. Fame brings opportunity, but it also exposes families to scrutiny, legal risk, and emotional strain. The Browns leveraged their unique lifestyle into a multi-season hit, but the collapse of the show, coupled with personal loss and legal battles, shows the fragility of life built around performance. Ultimately, the Browns' story is one of adaptation. The family continues to navigate survival in a world without network cameras, balancing personal health, family obligations, and public curiosity. While the myth of Alaskan Bush People may have ended, the real-life story, messy, emotional, and ongoing, continues to unfold. Fans watching from afar are witnessing more than just a post-show life. They are seeing the complex interplay of reality TV, family dynamics, and the challenges of preserving identity when the cameras are gone. The Browns vanished from the screen, but they have not disappeared. Their journey, legally, socially, and emotionally, is far from complete, offering a sobering, fascinating glimpse into what happens when the wilderness, fame, and real life collide.